Hello, have you ever wondered the best way to leave responses in the hands of your user on your website? It is through your FAQ. Now, if you have an interactive and engaging FAQ, it is likely that you'll save your customer support center a ton of stress. And that is why we're creating a custom FAQ page that you can embed on any website. It is modern and clean. Let us look at some of the functionality. You can open and toggle each of the FAQ and allow the user to enjoy or see answers to their questions. The unique aspect of this FAQ is you don't really need to add so much code in order to add more to the list. For instance, it just takes me to duplicate this very code and save. When I refresh, it's already added to the list. As you can see, and it's going to work. We can reduce the title of this just for us to see the difference. And if we check, we're going to see that we can still see. So you can keep populating and without actually touching any of the class or ID. Our JavaScript will help us undo that dynamic aspect. So let's dive into it. Script.js file, then link the file to our HTML document. Now, the next thing we need to do is just to declare our functions. But before we do that, let's take a look at some notes. If you look at what we have under the JavaScript logic, we're going to be using event bubbling. And event bubbling will help us to capture user click whenever they click on a particular button, which is going to be this button. Now we're going to use the hideTag function to hide the element. Now once we hide the element, we're going to then use the forEach loop to target each of the button and apply a particular function to them whenever an element is being triggered. Finally, we're going to also be working with the if statement to make sure that our logic is perfectly done. Let's dive into it. Right now, the code isn't running, nothing is working right yet. I recommend, if you haven't watched the HTML version of this project, kindly just watch so that you can have an idea of the building block on how we created this. Without further ado, let's dive into it. Okay, so the first I want to do is to target our FAQ element. We just need to target this container. We need to target this very FAQ. For us to do that, we're going to use a query selector, which is part of JavaScript function that will allow us to target an element on the page. So I'm just going to say constant. The constant means variables that cannot be changed. So we just say constant, then we call it FAQ tag. Then we just say document, just say document.query selector all. We want to select all the elements, so we're just going to wrap it and just say that we need the FAQ class. Something is wrong here. We can just correct it. It's document.query selector all. So we are selecting all the elements with the FAQ class. Now moving on, let's just leave a comment as to what we want to do next. So I'm just going to say, so right now we want to hide all the elements. So we need a function that will hide elements and change the icon button. So the name of our function is going to just be, we can give it const. So remember const is, so I'm just going to say hideTag. Then we're just going to declare our function. Then we're using arrow function. Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to call in this FAQ and do it for every of the tag. So the forEach loop allows us to do that. We're just going to say FAQ tag. Then we call the forEach function. Then we say item. This is the variable that we're going to use to access all the item. Still going to use the arrow function. Then we want to say item for each of the item. We want the class list. Then we want to remove the open. Remember the open class that was added. Then we just say open. So the next thing is we need to also change the button. So we want the button to be something like the plus. We want the button, each time it is closed, we want this plus button. So we're just going to copy that. We're just going to say the same item dot children. So we are targeting the children. So how the children work is when we target this class list, we want the child. So we have two children, 1 and 2. So we are targeting this one. So the children function works in a way works with the index. So we need to capture children. As you can see, what we check now is going to be 1, since the index is starting from 0. So we want to change the inner content, inner HTML. Then we're giving it this value. Okay, so and this is basically all we need for the hide function. So if we come to our program, nothing is happening yet. But what if we call the function? So I'm just going to call the function. If we save it and come back here, you can see that everything is gone. We've removed the class and added the plus sign to all of them. So if we click right now, nothing is happening. So we need to add event so that whenever we click, it actually opens. So I'm just going to remove this, or we can just leave it. But the next is we just call, let's write the comments, what we're trying to do again. So right now we want to toggle targeted elements to show with the forEach loop. Okay, so this is what we're trying to achieve right now. So the next thing is we need to target this very element again and add the event to it. So we're just going to say the FAQ, then add the forEach loop. So adding the forEach loop, still the same way, we are going to use item. Then we're going to use still the arrow function. Now what we want to do is for every element, we want to add event listener. So we're just going to reference each of the item, then we're going to say add event listener. Then we need to follow it with the function. We want the click event, so we're just going to have it here. We also need to capture the event. So the event can be captured with E, then we just also use arrow function. So you can see how we are indexing function. So right now we need to check a condition. And one way to even do this is let's try to console.log the event. So I'm just going to say console.log, which allows to print value on the console. So we'll just say console.log, then let's the E. So you can see we're referencing the E. Whatever value comes into the E, we want to print it to the console. So if we try to check our browser and check for the value, this is what we'll see. Let's just inspect. So let's click each of them and see what happens. So we're just going to come to storage, console. So for every time you click, you can see that you're seeing the event. You're seeing what's the value. So if we check, you can see that you're actually clicking event. Well, how about we just say event.target. So we want to be specific. So whenever you click, you see that you're getting the actual elements. You're getting the actual elements. So if I click on the H2, we're going to get the H2. If I click on the div, you're going to get the div. So this is the functionality of event bubbling. Now that we have the event bubbling working, let's just quickly write a conditional statement. So what we need to say is if event.target is, okay, let's just say event.target.class name is equals to btn. So this time around, we are writing a condition to check if whenever we click the btn, that is when we want something to happen. So what we're just going to do is to say, let's call the hide function first. So we want to hide the previous, whatever has been open, we want to hide it. Then once we hide it, we can then open the new button that is clicked. So we're just going to say this event.target again. Event.target.parent element. So the parent element is referencing, so this is what we are targeting, but we are saying we want to reference the parent element. Once we reference the parent element, then we want to call the class list, we want to toggle class, then we want to toggle is spelled like this. We want to toggle this class open. This was the class we added when we were doing the HTML mockup. And pretty much what we need to do next is just save it and check if everything is running properly. So whenever we click, you can see that it's actually working. It is working. The challenge right now is that the button is not changing. The button is not changing to the minus. So one way to do that is to call the event.target, which is this very event, still event.target, then .inner HTML. So you can use this to change the content of the tag. So take, for instance, to change this very content. So let's just quickly look for the button. So what we're looking for now is the minus. The minus HTML code is this. So we're just going to copy it, then just paste it here. And if we save it and come back here, you can see that it is replacing the content each time we click. And if we refresh our page, nothing is showing. But what if we want to leave the first one to display? We are just going to remove this very function that we call here. So if I save it, you can see that the first one displays, and once we click, it responds accordingly. Close the previous one and open the new one. If this video was helpful to you, leave a comment in the comment box, and if you want us to deal with any topic, you can also leave that in the comment box and we're going to follow up with that. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on all our social media handles. Until next time, I'll see you in the next one.